We've decided that using your program, so we just follow through with the presenters. Whaamole, in terms of saving time, could you please just follow through? But if you have questions, we are promoting also the online platform. So if you have questions, just use that live chat and also send us emails or on Facebook, and we will respond accordingly. So once again, please, questions will be later, but according to weather warnings now we just received and bad weather, that timu, it will be continuing timu. So we will continue with presentations throughout until afternoon tea. Follow the program whaamole. Yeah, but for your information, if you're Professor Mongotia and himself, will be facilitators. If you have any questions, send through email. We will respond straight away. Yeah, session 2 is now, we decide to start. It's 3 minutes past 1:30. The leader of our session 2, which is the Dean of the Faculty of Science of Yonga Tufusa'a, Patila, Dr. Amosa, for your presentation for 15 minutes.
Yep. We start? Okay. Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. My second talk this afternoon is based on the research I mentioned in my first presentation on the biosecurity of our water resources. So this is an outline of my talk, and I will go straight to the rationale. So why did we decide on this topic? Samoa's reefs and lagoons are in a precarious shape and worse than other similar small islands, and coral cover around Upolu is extremely low, and fish size has been found to be smaller than neighboring islands, so probably due to a combination of climate change, cyclones, and human activities around Upolu. There have been no systematic studies on elemental concentration in fresh and marine water, and similarly, no comprehensive microbiological studies, especially for marine water. We did some brief one for river water. So we need to pursue drivers of terrestrial and aquatic decline in biodiversity, which can be used in monitoring mitigation activities prior, during, and after implementation. And we also considered potential links of water characteristics to coral health and human health. So we went into this project with 3 objectives. Firstly, to collect and analyze fresh and saltwater resources of Upolu for absolute concentrations of about 69 elements across the periodic table, to assess water safety through analysis of microbial diversity and quality, and to assess the extent to which microplastics are present in the environment. For this presentation, I will focus on the last 2 objectives. So the works took place in the first half of December last year, where samples were collected from rivers and volcanic lakes around Upolu. We had a boat going around the island to collect water samples from 39 locations, and for each sample location we collected triplicate samples for elemental testing, microplastics analysis, and for microbial identification. So during sample collection, These are the physical-chemical characteristics that were measured at the time. So these can give an indication of the health of the water. Also, once we had the samples in the lab, we conducted some qualitative analysis for the presence and or absence of microbes in the water samples. Unfortunately, all water samples indicated some level of contamination. Then the contaminated water samples were filtered, and the filter papers were taken to New York University in Abu Dhabi for DNA isolation and sequencing. Water samples were were preserved and transported to New York University in the States for microplastics measurements. So some results on pH and the salinity. The salinity of about 1/3 of all seawater samples was very high. And while that may not have any direct relationship to human health, those levels may be lethal to coral organisms. Seawater salinity ranged from 35 to 54, very high because the normal is around 34, 35. And among all seawater samples, 29 samples had salinity greater than 40 parts per million, parts per thousand. The pH values, on the other hand, for fresh water range from 6.64, from slightly acidic to alkaline, while seawater pH ranged from 7.7 to 8.17, which in terms of ocean acidification, that 7 is quite low. So this chart here, this map here shows the distribution of salinity around the island, and you can identify where salinity levels are quite high around the island by referring to that legend there. In terms of E. coli levels, all freshwater samples contain coliforms and pathogenic fecal-derived E. coli, suggesting consistent contaminations that may cause health problems if enough bacteria are ingested by a person. So each seawater sample tested also tested positive for either coliform or E. coli due to various reasons such as water runoff, wastewater discharge, or near-shore human activities. So we saw that population concentrations, which appear as dark blue shading, so we see that where population is concentrated, there is also more abundance of these bacteria. So this is around the Apia area. This graph here shows bacterial diversity and comparing freshwater and our seawater sample. So the distances between points represents how similar or dissimilar samples are, and generally the bacterial composition of fresh water clustered together but away from the blue cluster of seawater bacteria. So because one of the major selection factors for bacterial adaptation is salinity, seawater bacteria always tend to be starkly different from freshwater bacteria. In terms of bacterial taxonomy and relative abundance, the analysis of the bacterial taxa in all water samples shows a significantly higher abundance of bacteria in the freshwater relative to the seawater samples, probably due to high organic input from the soil. So one clear pattern that we can see in both groups of samples is that the enteric bacteria that are typically the source of diseases when present in aquatic environments are present in both groups of samples, and I have circled these here. In terms of the relative abundance and diversity of enteric bacteria, the most abundant genus of enteric bacteria in both water sources was Klebsiella, and some members of this genus are pathogenic towards humans and or mammals and can cause diseases and infections. But we feel that our current data cannot tell us whether these genus identified are pathogenic or not. but at the same time, we also feel that their relative high abundance in samples suggests that some may be pathogenic. In terms of distribution and abundance of the enteric bacteria or of the Escherichia, Shigella, Klebsiella, and Salmonella bacteria, the maps here show the distribution of these enteric bacteria around, found on and around Upolu, and you can see that for these particular two Klebsiella and Salmonella, there seems to be a concentration here on this island, whereas for this group of bacteria, a concentration at the east end of Upolu. For microplastics, nearly all freshwater and seawater samples contain microplastics, as illustrated here. So the bigger the bubble, the more concentrated the level or the higher the levels are. So distributions of microplastics follow population concentrations, with highest concentrations in the northern Settle Coast and in the vicinity of Salelua here in the south coast of Upolu. So just some findings, trying to relate our findings to some human health issues and the environment. There have been studies conducted previously identifying the status of our coral reefs, and a lot of damage as recently identified. But for these studies, what was missing was a model system to identify the finer details at the foundation of threats to coral reefs. And with an integrated, we thought we would use our system to try to identify the root cause of this damage to our marine ecosystems. So we have identified several environmental challenges that individually or more likely cumulatively may explain problems that require mitigation. So the oxygenation of Samoa waters is favorable to aquatic life. We saw that dissolved oxygen levels were okay, but the salinity of coastal waters should be investigated. So to see also if increased salinity is a recent episode, or it may be, or whether it's due to climate induced decreased freshwater flow into the sea, or whether there is a faster a speed increase in the rates of evaporation. We also need to explore causes of salinity variability in the inner reef and the reef coast zone of the coastal waters. The near universal distribution of enteric bacteria throughout sampling sites from both fresh and seawater sources suggests a general sanitation problem around the island, and our model system has revealed several potential causes of coral reef decline in terms of water quality anomalies and in terms of the presence of microplastics. There's a lot that we would like to do with the data. We have heaps of data on elemental composition. We need health data from that. Unfortunately, we are not able to access the data from the Ministry of Health so that we can do some correlation with our data. So we are still doing a lot of processing of these results to identify other likely problems or likely patterns to identify or to explain the observations that we are seeing now. So I'd like to acknowledge with great gratitude financial support from UNDP through the SKSI project and the support of the UN Resident Coordinator, our colleagues from New York University for sample analysis off campus. Great gratitude to staff of the Water Resources Division of MNRE, one of our partners, and also a huge thanks to my staff from the Computing, Maths, and Science departments who spent 2 weeks traveling around Upolu, sometimes in harsh conditions, to collect these samples. So with that, thank you for your attention.
Once again, Whamal Mole, if you have any questions, please note it down. You can send through Facebook or live stream to us. We'll respond accordingly. Thank you very much.
This one? This is the one, right? 21?
Also, while we're waiting for the presentation, please let your families know overseas and local. We have our program today streamed live on Facebook and also YouTube to make use of our online services. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will start off the presentation on learning analytics in higher education and some of the key implications for the National University of Samoa. To start off, digital technologies are changing the dynamics of the higher education sector, and we see that this has impacted teaching and learning practices. We see a grandeur of data explosion, and we also observe that higher education is introducing or adapting learning analytics to better comprehend and support its learners. Now, what is learning analytics? That must be the question. It's the measurement, collection, analysis, and reporting of data about the learners. Obviously, based on the literature reviews, the benefits attested include enhanced feedback, being able to capture students' performance data, to enhance our teaching and learning endeavors, and augmenting student performance. Now, LA is still in its premature stages in Europe, but when parallel to the US and Australia, it's a different scenario. And Janoski and Arroway stipulate that there needs to be sorry about that. Janoski and Arroway stipulate that there needs to be greater attention towards monitoring or evaluating student progress to build intervention plans. Wong's scholarship, however, talks about how institutions can meticulously monitor students' learning and diligence, and learning analytics plays an important role because we are able to distinguish detrimental learning behaviors and emotive states, and also identify students at risk. So we are all aware that we have been filling in our student at risk reports. So that is what learning analytics is all about. And this gives us an environment to actually reflect on our teaching and learning enhancements. Other benefits, of course, attested from the literature is that it helps us understand what factors cause or drive student success. And as student success is dependent on retention, we are also able to improve graduation rates based on the learning analytics data sets. It can actually use learning analytics, or we can actually use learning analytics to feedback on our learning designs and program designs to revisit the curriculum. Now, what are some of the challenges that we face in the literature? Obviously, the literature talks about setting a vision that is meticulously aligned with institutional priorities. The other key challenge that it talks about is the need for leadership, stakeholder consultation, and analysis of the changes by working closely with our students. Of course, the lack of readiness or skills among staff become a key issue as well. And there may be issues pertaining to student privacy and social and cultural challenges that we face as well. Currently, what is happening we are having student at-risk reports, we have graduate profiles, we have end of the semester evaluations, we have our TEL policy, we have student evaluations of non-academic services, we do our graduate surveys, graduate employability workshops, which is at the end of every academic year in November, and also our statutes on our progress to monitor the performance of our students. What do we see as some of the implications for NUS as we are striving towards teaching and learning excellence, which is strategically aligned to the strategy for the development of Samoa? The fact remains that our student recruitment is not only national but international as well. So the focus that we have is the strategic positioning to entice students nationally, regionally, and globally. On the same note, what do we need? We need leadership support and commitment, and this sets the impetus for governance practices at the university and for formulating key policies, strategies, and frameworks and guidelines when it comes to collecting data on learning analytics, synthesizing it, and evaluating it. We need to drive and open up consultative process through stakeholder participation and appraisal regarding the learning analytic tools, methodologies, or processes that we could use. Another important part here is actively engaging our students to design intervention strategies so that we can also address students that may need attention, especially students with learning disabilities. We need to build capacity. We need to manage data. Of course, research is lagging in this area. So research scholarships in this area is significant. Quality assurance plays an important role. We do have quality assurance teams. The academic quality unit is charged with ensuring quality assurance of NUS programs and courses. We also have AQU, Senate, and faculties that play a vital role in assessment and assurance. So to sum it up, we do have a TEL policy, and the question that we need to ask is, once we have implemented it and evaluated it, have we realized the full benefits of TEL for our NUS students? We need to examine the relevance of learning analytics, enhancements that we can bring about in teaching and learning to measure institutional progress and map our way forward through stakeholder dialogue and consultation. Now, this study that I have just presented does not in any way deliberate that the implications of learning analytics for NUS are conclusive in nature. That's not the intention of this research. The intention is rather to start a dialogue on what tools or methodologies that we are using, how best we can feedback that for our teaching and learning, how best we can design intervention strategies for our students, especially students with special needs that require our attention through the learning analytics tools and methodologies. So this is just a prelim attempt. It's a pioneering research, and I consider myself to be a pioneer to undertake such a research. But what I'm trying to drive is seek more consultation and feedback on how best we as a university would be able to deploy the tools and methodologies to improve our students' intervention strategies. Because at the end, that is going to impact on our student satisfaction rates, that will impact on our students' ability to perform, and it will also impact on our program and learning designs. So that's the end of the presentation. I welcome all feedback. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Malo soifua, ya. E whaitau ngalu, salmuli a ngai le awaitanga. So where are my notes? Oh, okay, choice. Thank you. Okay. You're all familiar with the coastline of Tonga, with Tonga blowholes. Now, the dreaded reef channel at Tonga on the big island of Savaii offers a lesson for researchers who try to navigate their ways through the complexities of Samoan social and political relationships. The shore, of course, the shore breaks, creates a hazardous coast where the waves break directly onto shore. The unpredictable waves have claimed many lives, either by drowning or through a violent landing on the sharp, rocky coastline. Yet, generations of Salamulianga, the traditional orators and keepers of the reef, who, through trial and error, have come to understand its precarious nature, having traversed it through a lifetime. Their success stems from a lifetime of adapting to the peculiar conditions by counting the waves to ensure a navigator's safe passage to shore. This ancient ritual of waiting, watching the swells, counting the breaks when the surf are the weakest, and getting ready to catch the right wave for a safe landing exemplifies the research journey to the many corners, my research journey to the many corners of Samoa Islands and some parts of New Zealand in search of Samoan women's wartime experiences. And it has some research methodologies that I would like to share with everyone today. Perhaps it can be a lesson for you too. Now, in 2011, while interviewing some Samoan women for a different book, this was a Marsden-funded project Pacific-wide with the University of Otago, I came across a certain performance of how Samoan women's wartime experience was told. The history is told by, it's a performance, it's whispered quietly, followed by a sneering laugh. That finite memory, o kengi sa mo malako malingi, it seems like it's the only thing that is written for us, but it's not written in the books, in the researches, but it's etched in the minds of generations who have experienced it, and then judged by the generation that survived after the war. And that, well, of course it pissed me off. I wasn't satisfied with that history I inherited. So I asked, why are you thinking like that? Is there nothing else that we did that is worth mentioning? And they all seem to look around, but they always seem to say, this is it. This is what they did. But then I thought of, okay, I'm going to spend 4 years of my life to show that there were other experiences other than this very heavy, one sentence, half a sentence, etched in the mind. So I decided to just look at people and how the war transformed our society in a very subtle way. Yes, we were not conquered by guns. It was through Baby Ruth, chocolate, and kokolaisa, which is the cocoa pudding, the rice pudding. But there were there was a range of experiences that I wanted to know. The historiography was not did not satisfy because they sort of went all around the topic, but there were others who were starting to discover it. That includes me. Other previous assessors of Samoan women's roles did not provide any other. So where are you? In my search for Samoan women during the war, I had to go to the source because there was nothing. And perhaps this is the first lesson for us as researchers. We need to understand also that there is the politics of location, because each location offers certain vibes, certain conditions, and it channels the experience. For example, I chose to do Samoa Islands instead of just doing Western Samoa and American Samoa. Yes, because I can. And the map, so it's very difficult. The map's very new. So the definition of these locations were really up to the researcher on how your definitions were. And of course, because I had to go to the source, I had to go to the women who were interviewed, and some literature there to identify the importance of oral history. And of course, all that time while I was waiting at the starting line, I was wondering, how the hell am I going to do this, given that I'm going to Samoa? And it's the place that I will return to. Importance of oral history as well is because in our society, we have people, our society is very oral. We do not have, it gives access to people who, oral history gives us access to the world of majority of people who do not leave behind a written account of their lives. So this is their moment of history as well. The location of the interviews I did, this was the location of where they experienced the war at, all the way from Falealupo to Ta'u. So that's the cover, the area that I did. And I do encourage people to cover the rest of the Samoa Islands, because you see very different pictures and get new meanings. And this is where I found them. I found them, some in their homes, where the villages where they experienced the war. Others have moved. And when they move, their stories become traveling stories. And some of them then end up in other archives, which are looking at it. They are in the rest homes, these stories. So you need to have the courage, visit them, bring them out. Of course, you must also have a muse with you. Two people I took with me, one was my mother, the other one was a woman, a picture of a Samoan woman painted in the Wilkes, during the times of the Wilkes expedition just before the turn of the century. This woman over there, unknown, but Samoan still. So I thought I'll just take her along with me. But going back to counting the waves and counting the waves of limitations, one of the things that we have to be clear about is that we need to be clear of our role as historians, as academics, as Samoans as well. Okay, let me read this. Because to get to the source, you have to go through layers of security guards that are there. Okay. Identifying and accessing these women has been a race against time because of their old age as well. I interviewed people who ranged from 83 to 109. So after the war, only about 3 people are still living. So, yeah. There were social contours that required attention and understanding. As an Indigenous researcher from Samoa, I was aware of my obligation to the rules of academic research, as well as your responsibilities to the community that you are researching. This is also the home that one has to return to when the research is finished. And on the other hand, you hear the scholars, they keep saying the academic pursuit of gender history, demanding that, you've got to disturb even the grounds on which you stand. On the other hand, it's a contest that you must respect the culture within I live. The success of this research was dependent on balancing these two traditions with respect to the Samoan women, whose history I sought. So navigating the two required me to do what the old Samoan voyagers did at the dreaded reef of Channel Reef at Tanga. I had to learn to count the waves, like Salamulianga, to reach a successful conclusion. The other one is understanding your role, because you're an insider, you're Samoan, you're also an outsider in a way, because the moment you ask the question, you immediately become an outsider. So you become an outsider inside. These sort of words in playing. But you have to juggle all the time. And these are the things that researchers must understand and must know how to navigate your way through these subtleties. The Samoa, the cultural protocols, I observe now how some of our young staff do not see the Samoan protocols as important, but they are important once you come to learn that this is the context that you are going to deal with. When I did this research, I had to go around with the Tusifalupenga, the book of honorifics, and certain times when you go to interviews, you have to stop a couple of meters away from the house, learn these, rehearse these before you actually enter. So you have to know your role there as you go. Because when you go, the first things that they will ask, and these are women, yes, they are women who run households, who have so much mana in their communities as well. Because you, as a researcher, don't try to take the bull by the horns. You've got to ride it out. Patience is very crucial, because the next thing, being an insider, you are at the mercy of the participants' demeanor and predilections. As an inside researcher, we must be prepared to allow the participant to ask questions of us. In Tutuila, I was interviewed by a participant before I entered their whaletele. I was told not to come in because she had questions. In Samoa, it is rude to speak to an elderly person while standing. So I sat by the entrance of the whaletele and answered her questions, which included, and this is how she rolled, "O whea ke sa wai? Where are you from? Oi oe. Who are you? O whea lo nguu? O aile makai o lo ainga. O ainga whai akwe ke sau ya ke au." You get interviewed before you give the interview. And of course, being the person who is a seeker of knowledge, you've got to choose. You've got to be very patient, because you're running. This is the source. These are the things you have to deal with. Well, these were the things I dealt with. Knowing the honorifics is very important. And especially when you're dealing with a very sensitive research that I did. I was looking at women who had children from the Marines and what women did during the war. And with all the four aspects I was looking at. deportment when meeting face to face with an elder is extremely a spiritual moment. Is it me or is it 15 minutes already? Is it 15 minutes already? What, Uma? Whoa, oh yeah, okay, well that's the last, okay. Let me say, the fatu lima and the falpenga is very important. You've got to choose your words wisely. When you come on, do not say, ole su e suenga. Use words like, ole sa ili, ole tangata sa ili. Because if they piki oi ngai kalanga. The euphemism and the metaphors in the vernacular, understanding the va, listen, be quiet, give them all the space in the world. Okay? And of course, when you go to Manua and when you go to other places that have certain customs, certain histories, you have to abide by them, wha'amolmole. Especially learning how to play bingo. I had to do that because these are the things that the old ladies like. Learning how to play bingo, learning how their anthems, the village anthems, or vi'i o nu'u, because you have to sing along with them to get the buy-in. And so I did, and I felt like that American who went there earlier. But I was thinking, I hope I'm not doing something the same. But yeah, and in doing that, but as a Catholic, Manua is one hell of a very, very spiritual place. When I went to it, my mother packed a book of exorcism prayers, a scapula, a rosary, and a prayer, and 2 liters of Levi bottles of holy water to take, because this is the history that she grew up, she was raised in. You see it. But when I was there, true, I felt it. But when you go things like that, already you're biased, the mind plays. But there were spiritual moments there that even now I cannot find the photos to do that. But the anthems are very important, please, because it can help redirect or give someone courage to speak about their harsh experience. Okay. And you get things like this, like, never knew that there was a rape during the war. You never knew that someone, when the troops arrived, this was the moment they saw it. When the kids, these are historical moments. And when the troops arrived at Leone, took over the whole village, and when they arrived at Salpali'i, to me, the war was exciting. And when arrived at that village of Solo Solo, it was framed as the Mau, during the Mau, because during the Mau movement, the village of Solo Solo was one of those supporters of the Mau, and when the Mau went seditious, the raids happened. So when the Americans turned up, they thought it was a raid, but no, it was the American troops. And it was the women who made life interesting, because they were, they were young people learning to be adults at the same time. And that generation that experienced the war became some of the first scholars that went to New Zealand in 1953. I think there's a lot of your aingas over here. I know the matriarch of the Masoe family is there, Tualati Resa is there, and the first scholarship. And of course, I found one of them, who experienced the war, Ole Kingaleo, Fainu, and Kosi. Yeah. Yeah, but those are all the lessons that you have to be aware of. And some of these women are gone. But it was in 2014, you know, the Prime Minister said during the time of SIDS, wear your best smile and wear your best dress. So I wore my best dress at the time going to Paia and to find out that my participant was a blind man. So my husband sort of cracked up and said, fancy you putting up that dress and the guy can't see you. But there were challenging moments and there are also good time moments. But these are all the things as we journey on as researchers. All right. Faftailava. Sorry, okay. Is this my, can I take it?
Tu fatasi o tō ao mo le tapenanga so far, whaftaitelo whionga so ia. Ia. Taluai ono le tatou sui o lo so mai nei o le whionga le sui o le tatou SQA. Ia, to mai o tō ao, whawhiroa i le sunga le tatou presenter, a Sam Balali from the SQA. Ia, lo whionga.
Ia wataro whātui, o whaunga visi, whapea le mano le. O sui o le, sui mi whai aonga le kopis o le National University of Samoa. Ia for your information. My real name is Sewa Muli Veninga Ngatau. Maybe miscommunication on the program between our contact person and the NUS organizers. But my colleague at the back there, he's Akau Palali. He will present on other paper downstairs at the 101. Anyways, the purpose of this presentation I will present on the findings of the survey of employer satisfaction on the 2015, 2016, 2017 graduates from PSET providers in Samoa, which includes the National University of Samoa. For your information, in 2019, the SQA launched the PSET Tracer Study Report. And from that report, we identified PSET graduates who are employed. And from this survey, we went straight to all the employers where the PSET graduates were employed. There are three key objectives of this survey. The first one is to determine the level of satisfaction of employers. Second one, the employers' feedback on the qualities of our employees. And the last one is the employers' view how to improve the PSET providers and the graduates. And these are the findings of our survey. For your information, this report was launched last week by the Minister of Education, and all the NUS, the VC and deans were invited. Unfortunately, no one will participate in the launch, maybe due to preparation for this research forum. For the response rates, a total of 1,395 employed graduates were targeted, and we only have 1,028 valid responses. So 74% of the target population were interviewed in the survey. In terms of employers, 75% of these graduates were employed as public servants. Majority of these graduates were in MISC, Whaiaonga MISC, also nurses who graduate from the National University of Samoa. So in terms of qualification, 56% were bachelor degrees, so the 56% were from the National University of Samoa, 29 on certificate level and 13 on diploma level. In terms of qualification relevancy, as you can see, 94% of qualification match. So in terms of qualification relevancy, it's not the same as employer satisfaction. So qualification could be relevant, but the supervisor may not be satisfied with the graduates. In terms of employer assessment, the assessment were based on 4 skill sets: the knowledge, understanding, qualities, general skills, and technical skills. The skills of graduate were assessed based on these 12 field of trainings and qualification. These are the UNESCO classification. So we used to assess the graduates' performance. So after the analysis of skill sets and the employer assessment by fields, so the overall employer satisfaction stands at 92% of employers were satisfied with the performance of graduates. So, and these are the 6 key recommendations from our supervisors that we identified, so we can help assist the providers in terms of program development and also program delivery, and also for employees. So thank you for time.
Alo whaftai whamalua tui lau whionga so amuri veni ngā tau. Sai foi mal whale tono o mātou whamomau. Ia peo le tupulanga nau whale tono ere. Se inga swafa. Ma alo whaftai mo le presentation.
Yeah, talo falava, malo lava leon sai. Can I invite you all to Mili? Can you all do this? Mili, Mili. Batia. Noa Bati? Hey. I think we need to go to our afternoon tea now. Okay. Okay, well, I'm very conscious of the time, and I'm pretty sure that we all need that caffeine injection. So what I've done is I've actually written a script so that I can stay on track and not do all sorts of different things. What I'm about to present is a work in progress research. And I call this a work in progress paper because it was actually developed in my time in quarantine. So there's a lot more that needs to be done. But you know, it's very interesting when you get quarantined behind the cemetery. You get so scared that night that you end up having to write stuff because you want to leave the lights on. So I'd like to thank, well, she's not here, but Associate Dr. Sopoanga, because she was actually supposed to be quarantined there, but then she left and left me there by myself. So without further ado, this is the result of sleeping with spirits and bones. Right. In the world of academia, it's imperative for academic teaching staff to engage in research and publication. Although this is a fundamental activity, the literature shows many universities report only a small number of their academics are active in research and publication. The building blocks proposed in this presentation are context-specific to higher education, but their flexibility allows for their application in many areas of business and also environments. These building blocks are inspired by my marketing and management expertise, and they are also inspired by marketing and management theories and concepts. They reflect my personal views and not that of the faculty that I love and work for. The publish or perish credo, it dates back to 1942, and it's still relevant today. In our NUS backyard, it's publish or get demoted. And I'm very happy to say that this person right here experienced the publish or get demoted. So I can say there is life after getting demoted because I'm still standing here, right? So as an institution, it's important to really build effective and efficient research strategies. And why is the battery running low? Okay. The building blocks here that you can see are inspired by a think global, act local approach to strategy. So this presentation only covers building block 1. Just a closer look at building block 1. You know, to stay competitive, we need to float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. I repeat, float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. And put the charger in. I don't want the battery to die on me. Okay. This means we need to understand what our competitors are doing. It also means that we need to know what's already in the literature so that we can understand the what, why, and how of research. We are all very familiar with doing an internal analysis. We've heard some wonderful objectives presented by deans and faculty, so we know what that means. I suppose for me, the point that I really want to stress here is the application of a top-down, bottom-up approach so that everyone is on the same page when reviewing inputs, processes, and outputs. A transparent stocktake identifies our SWOT, our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in relation to the inputs, processes, and outputs of research. This stage is obviously done by combining the information that we have gathered from building block 1 and building block 2. Building block 4, again, I'm sure we are aware of how to do strategy formulation, but again, I really want to highlight the top-bottom, bottom-up approach. You know, the goal here is really to set realistic outputs that can be supported by inputs and processes. The last building block is really about doing what we say we're going to do. You know, we're very good, I'm not saying we, I'm, using just the term we. We're very good at writing humongous proposals, putting in glossy objectives, but the question is, do we actually do what we say we're going to do? And at the end of the day, do we have the processes and the system in place to evaluate what we said we've done? So, as I said before, I'm only looking at building block 1. And to understand what's happening in the marketplace, the current and future corporate plans of 7 universities in New Zealand were analysed during my time with the spirits and the bones at Mangiangi. I wanted to look for patterns. I wanted to look for what universities had put in place to strengthen research in their staff. And I wanted to see what we could learn from that if we are going to float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. From this analysis, I was able to find patterns, and these were the patterns that I found. I saw that there were 6 areas of focus that could be identified and that relate to research. So what we can see here is that when we talk about research outputs, we're not talking only about staff. So the first one is encouraging or strengthening staff research output. The aim to increase and strengthen staff research outputs are supported by many strategies that I've kind of listed up there. These strategies target inputs such as our skills, research capabilities, and so forth. But they also look at the processes, the systems in place to support the facilitation of research and publication. Secondly, research strategies done by universities also look at how we as academics apply what we've learned into our teaching. You know, as academics, our research outputs should also benefit our teaching and our students. The impact of our research should be relevant in all areas of our specialization, and it should contribute to the learning experiences of our students. There are many tangible and intangible benefits of research collaboration. We see that staff are encouraged to invest in research collaboration with partnering universities and also other relevant stakeholders. Student research. A lot of the time, we tend to think that research output is all about us, but we must remember that we're also producing postgrads, masters, PhD students. So therefore, we should also look at them. They are also our priority. We need to encourage students to be active in research, because at the end of the day, whose name are they carrying? They're carrying the NUS name. The real drive here is for us as academics, us as facilitators, to support our students in the research and to actually encourage them to engage in research and publication. Our research outputs are most successful when it helps to inform decisions of our stakeholders. We need to engage in the community because it's really important for us to ensure that our research findings actually benefit society. Relevant stakeholders need access to information. You know, there's no point of us getting all our research done and the people that need to read it are not able to access it. So in this case, it's also about us looking at our systems so that we can provide timely, convenient, accessible, up-to-date information. To have a better idea as to why academics don't publish, I also wanted to look at the literature. So these are some of the main reasons, which I'm sure we can all relate to, as to why people don't choose to publish. I must say that the research that I looked at were mainly literature found in Australian, African, and European universities. Also in the literature, there are techniques, interventions, and models that people have proposed to actually improve academic research. And one of the models that I saw was really great is the model that I've got up here in 2005. I'm not going to go into the details, but if I were to summarize this model, it's basically, you know, today we talked about marriage. So I would say research productivity is a marriage between us as the individual staff and the institution that we work for, because they're providing the support and the systems that we need. But we also need a lot or a bit of leadership in that equation. The common techniques, as you can see up there, have also been suggested in the literature of how we as faculties can improve the research outputs from our team. To close, this presentation has shed light on building block 1. I want to emphasize that understanding our external environment helps us to position well, position better as a competitor in the world of academia. To end, we know that Rome was not built in one day, so the development of effective and efficient research strategies obviously don't happen overnight. More importantly, I really want to encourage that in whatever we do, whether it's strategies about research or coming up with ways to encourage our staff to engage in research, it's really important to be transparent, to ensure that everyone's on the same boat or the bus, or whatever you might want to call it. And I also want to encourage the top-down, bottom-up approach. You know, at the end of the day, the staff are the spine of any organization. So unless they are on board, it's very difficult for us to get them into research and collaboration. Thank you very much for listening, and I think I made it in time.
Malo whaftai. Ia talu ai ono wa iai nisi fufuanga ma ua manatu. La whaasolo pea le tātou por kalame. So for your information, the afternoon is not there yet due to heavy rain on Apia town. So we are going to go ahead with our presentations. So now we're moving on to presentation from Fanguele Suali'i, FOE. And then after that, hopefully we'll get a goal afterwards. And then we'll go to afternoon tea. Yeah, really. So we are. Yes. Wa fa'afetai, wa fa'afetai, wa mali e mata e va'a, wa tasilava o. Singing. Tasilava o ilore fa mo e mo. Let's hear, let's say, Tatu Sui mai fafo, pese.
I don't know the words.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyways, this is the introduction to my talk. My presentation today, I'll be looking at the English language, barrier to knowledge construction, and communication of scientific ideas. I'm sure this set the scene of everything. Sorry to put you on it. Now let me go back. In the morning I was talking about the purpose of research. We were looking at research. Why we do research? You know, looking at finding more information. And also to become aware of the situation. Now this presentation today is more of making you aware of what's going on. Now I'll share some information so that you can become aware of what's going on. Okay. Now let me take you back to the nature of the teaching of science or science education. That we science teachers try to make sure that the students and also the teachers, you know, the graduates, when they go out, they know this very, very well, inside out. First of all, we look at, this is how we do it. We must have the understanding of scientific concepts. They must have an understanding of the scientific topics, concepts. At the same time, they need to have some sort of practical investigations. They need to do all this. This is how we do it. This is how we teach science. We need these four. The third one, you need to communicate. Not only knowing something, you need to communicate. Oh, sorry, not even 15 minutes here. That was the previous lesson. We need to communicate. We need to tell everyone. We need to tell people. You need to explain to people that, hey, don't drink too much alcohol. Hey, yeah, so and so. And at the same time, we need to participate. We need to act out what we learn from scientific investigations from our science classes. So these are the 4. This is how we do science. 4. However, one of those is to communicate. Somehow that language to communicate with others or constructing the knowledge of students is problematic. Now let me take you back to, everybody knows it, this is from research. What's happening in that poor memory, that poor mind of the child, sitting in front of you, talking. There, I was trying to sing, let him sing the song. The same thing that happens to the child if the language is foreign. Where's Taka? Yeah, everybody knows about this. The first language, memory, and the second language, memory. Looking at the memory space of the first language, you have a larger space to make sense. The first language, you have a larger space to make sense, to think about the idea. And then very small space of your memory to talk back, answer, Miss XY. Second language, memory space, somewhat different. Now, looking at the available memory space to make sense, to think about the language, the actual question, the idea given to the child, the question, the problem to solve. Why? Why is it small space? First one, he or she has to translate. Translating from the language presented to him to the language that he's comfortable with. Then, think. Okay. After knowing the answer, after getting the answer, the poor child has to translate back to the language that was presented to him. For instance, English. Then, translate. After finding, oh, okay. Miss, it's question number 4 already. The class, the lesson has gone past the idea, learn a question. So what's happening now? Go back down. Okay, that's just a flashback. Go back. So that's what happened. The child has problems with language, and therefore constructing, making sense, getting to know, understanding, and then the communicating is problematic. All these ideas having problems. Now, here is something that I created during my time of suffering at Massey University. I came up with IEP model, the introduction phase, the lecturer, the teacher using a specific language to explain, to introduce, to talk about stuff in the class. Now, they use Samoan because imagine using English in the class. Then after that, they look at exercises. There's a different language also. If they use Samoan during the language discussions, then in their ngaluenga activity, they use a different language. Please copy these words or do the exercise on board. They use a different language. Exploration. Then at the end, there's an exam. There's a test. And you know very well the test is given in English. Yeah. Sorry? For this exercise. This exercise was done in 2013. Year 13. Yeah. This is all in the year 13 students. Yep. It's a concept in science, yes, in year 13. And then doing all this, yes, I know where you come from. Using the Samoan language in the class. Yes, doing the discussions and everything, Samoan umame. And this is science class. And then when it comes to activities and things, a different language, again, English, given in English. So the discussion time, English, Samoan, activity time, English, exam time, English. Okay. So what happens is that when they present their work, somehow it's very difficult to, construct, it's very, very hard for them to communicate, to show you that they have learned something, to show you that they know something. The researches that I've shown and I've talked about were based on overseas, in primary, secondary level. Now, for you to be aware of my talk, my presentation, these findings are from the university level. And I'm afraid that we have barriers. We have a language problem at the university level, which is one of my courses that I'm doing. These are the evidence of the work that I receive from my students, which demonstrate the problematic or the problems that happen with the language. It's for you to be aware of. Pyramid not so quite different from my food pyramid, because health leveled the different food in their stages so that they encourage. This is one of the findings from the students' work. The significance of scientific knowledge is family health nurse. They come and explain more about my body, and also I will know about everything inside my body. Most of the time I ate in my family are the nighttime dinner. It's very hard to put together. This one. Even the spelling, electricity, electricity. And this is often seen. A space, they don't have answers to some of the questions. They leave it blank and wonder why. Is it because of that communicating problem? Is it because of that language that they're having problems with, therefore they cannot express, they cannot put into words, and therefore, fa'apu. And then the lecturer will decide what to do with that. Reading and writing, look at the spelling. Same thing, phonics. The list continues. As long as the strategies and weaknesses of job, also the negative side and positive side of teaching are lots and lots of advantages and disadvantages. Spelling test, and also from past tense to present tense to past tense. Past tense for bend is bended. Past tense for catch is catched. Eaten, bought. I think this one's correct. Now, as you can see here, the problems that I found is more of the expressing, it's more the communicating of their knowledge, and also constructing knowledge because of the language. If it was given in a language that they are familiar with, what would have happened? Would they be able to answer correctly or not? So that's where I stopped. It's a matter of inability to construct due to language, inability to communicate due to the language, inability to write it properly because of the language. I mean, you can see the ideas presented up there. They kind of have some sense in there, some meaning, but somehow the presentation, communicating it clearly, correctly, so that they're able to get the correct ideas in there for them to pass on, for the students to learn these kinds of ideas. So that's where the problem is. And this is what I found in my science course at Faculty of Education that I would like to share and for everybody to be aware of. That this language difficulty, it's actually causing a lot of problem with students' knowledge, constructions, as well as the communicating of ideas within their course. Untitled Chapter. Yeah, another hat. Now we come to 5 more minutes to 3. I guess this is a time for us to have a little bit of break. We've received some questions so far online. Leah, yes, we do. Yes. I think one of the comments is malo manaya faftai. Very well. Sekia. So thank you so much for your comments. Yes.
Ask a question. Well, make a comment and then ask a question about your paper. Have you read the paper report in 2016 that was led by Dr. Caroline? You know, it was a regional benchmarking for literacy and numeracy. And the findings were that in year 4 and year 6 spell test that the Samoa had the lowest literacy rate in English compared to other Pacific Island groups that they were in the survey on the tests themselves. So they went into the classrooms to actually try and figure out why everyone else was 30% for language 2, which is English, and the mother tongue language 1 is usually 50 and above. So that's fair enough. But now Samoa's unique is declining. And they have to ask, what's happening in the Samoan classroom? So they went and observed the teachers. And the sentence I always remember was that they found that the teachers in Samoa were not transiting to the second language, even in the classrooms where they're supposed to teach English as a language. It said that they carried on in language 1 because, and this was they were more comfortable in the mother tongue. Our challenge when we go to Savai and for the teachers is to say to them, when they say this to us, they're more comfortable. Parents don't want them to speak English. They'd rather have them stay and not go pick apples and leave for New Zealand. They want to stay here. So only Samoan is important. Our challenge to the teacher is, if you are paid to teach this language, teach it. If you don't want to teach it, go teach another language or go teach another subject. So my question then to you is, if this is happening, because we have it also in our faculty, this is very, very endemic and very normal. You know what you're putting up there? We see 800 students for foundation, and plus education as a faculty and nursing have a lower entry. So science, arts and commerce have the higher entry and you have more sort of competence, but at the education and nursing you have more of this as a norm. So there's the challenge for us, challenge for you. What do we do about it in terms, are the lecturers speaking only Samoan like the teachers in the classrooms for secondary and primary? That's my question.
Faftai for the comments. Yes, we do support in terms of having this difficulty, not just primary schools, secondary schools, and also it's happening in the university level. Now, we do have some sort of help. You see, we've gone down to the spelling tests. We've gone down to that level, vocabulary, and we've gone as low as, we're going back to the basics, I would say. The reading, you know, the pronunciation of all those. I think we have to go down because these are not only the pre-service students, we are also having in-service, which are the teachers who are out in the schools coming back for upgrade. So they're also having problems, although that they've been on the field for many years. So we're doing that, and we're going down to the basics, and they look at us and think, why are we doing the basics? Because you're having problem with the basics. So the lecturers at the Faculty of Education are working extra hard, giving work for them to do, we get the first attempt, we do, you know, and it's workload for the lecturers as well, you know, trying to help them to get into a level. And we even initiate alui oile student support to get some help. But they don't go, that's the thing. So we've tried our best to give extra work, guide them to where they should be going to get help. I mean, but that's the thing. We have gone down to the basics as far as we can. Yeah.
Just to add, I mean, since the cell phone came into help, the spelling all over has become bad. So it's not just a Samoan problem, it's a global problem since the cell phone came in place. But the language thing I'm interested in, if a child of mixed marriages, say they have 3 languages that they can actually speak at home, if they learn it early enough, they continue. Now, we have graded the English, like say we put it till year 6,
that they actually start doing it. When they could learn it young, same as our Samoan language, then they would be able to cope with both languages well. So that's my suggestion.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. Yeah, Waftai. Do you want to know, is there any other comments? It's now 3 o'clock. Yeah, Lofiama.
In a way, because we come from, this kind of background like what Vineta alluded to. I have 8 grandchildren, they all speak 3 different languages. And then they go to Wainganga Primary School so that they can be able to pick up the Samoan language. So in Wainganga Primary School, they're given homework all in Samoan. The Samoan language, of course, then maths, English, basic science. So they are all in Samoan. So they come home and I have to spend time with them to, change them all in English so that they can be able to understand. And, it's quite difficult. Why I do so, in fact, I argue when I was taking 300 level paper with Konai famine on the same issue, way back in 1970 in Samoa, they put a lot of emphasis on English. And we students from Savai'i, we were marginalized because we didn't have any library whatsoever. The only language we spoke was Samoan. Our maths was really good because we went out in the plantation and collect the coconuts. And then we start counting, go to the ocean and collect the seashells. And then we do maths under the whekau tree. And we were very good with maths. I'm flicking back and forth so we can be able to see from a perspective of a mother and a grandmother here. And we were struggling with English, so we didn't have the opportunity to enter Leififi primary school, intermediate school, but Pisupo was there at that time, just because our English was very poor. But thank God for, the struggle that we went through, that we were able to catch up later. And I think that's why I commended your research. So I have my grandchildren and I said, you're not going to learn the Samoan, you learn first English because Nana went through hard time and I don't want you to go through the hard time I went through. So yeah, that's, it's the other side of the road. So yeah, thank you very much for the research.
Mano Waftai. Yeah, Waftai te lava mo fsoswani fo ilea ngalwenga. Timsalo, it's a holistic approach for all of us to work together, since I've heard that it's not just the Faculty of Education experiencing this kind of difficulty, not just my course, HTE 360, but it seems that it's happening across. So it's something that we can work together as well. But this is an awareness kind of research for everybody to be aware of. But once again, now we're going to have a 10-15 minutes break. Have our teas ready, and then we can come back for the last 2 presentations. Whaftai tere lava, manuia le fiaf. And then Joanna.